Hey there, welcome to Valor and Hope, where we cut through the noise and dig into the facts. I'm Greg, an Iraq War veteran committed to progressive change. It's time to stand up, speak out, and take action for the future we deserve. Let's make that happen together. In my previous video, I explained stolen valor in the context of accusations made against Governor Tim Walz. I mentioned my next video, this one, would take a deeper dive into his military career. I wanted to release this sooner, but I've been spending a lot of time on research for the penultimate course in my master's degree program, and frankly, that has been exhausting. Before we dive in, let me clarify something. I served in the Air Force on active duty for 4 years. I am not an expert on Army or Guard and Reserve life. From my experience, I can tell you that in my Air Force career field, active duty members had a closed book test that they had to take every month on classified and unclassified information. Scoring anything under a 90 was considered a fail, and you were decertified and had to get recertified. Guard and Reserve in the same career field didn't have to take those tests, but it's understandable because they weren't doing the job full time like I was. I don't know if Army and career fields have similar differences, so I'm not going to speculate about that. I mention this because I've seen comments on TikTok trying to lessen Mr. Walz' service because he was not active duty. I do not agree with that. Tim Walz enlisted in the Army National Guard at the age of 17 and served for 24 years, eventually being honorably discharged when he retired in 2005. According to Walz, he re-enlisted for 4 more years after 9/11 instead of retiring at his 20-year mark. And all sides fact check supposedly debunked this statement because they claim that since Walz wasn't eligible for retirement until the following year, they argue that he couldn't have been directly retired to the 9/11 attacks when he chose to retire. I'd point out here, though, that it's hard for anybody to speculate what was going through his mind at the time. A year after 9/11 is a year after 9/11, so I think it's certainly plausible that he may have been planning to retire until 9/11 changed his mind. I don't think they debunked anything there like they do. During his final enlistment, Walz held the rank of Command Sergeant Major, an E9 position, which is the highest enlisted rank in each branch. However, he didn't complete required courses to maintain this rank. Specifically, according to a military.com article, he would have had to complete the Sergeant's Major Academy. As a result, upon his retirement, he was administratively reduced in rank to Master Sergeant, an E8. This reduction in rank has led to accusations of stolen valor on platforms like TikTok with claims that he lied about his rank. However, according to a captain, Holly Rockow, a spokesperson for the Minnesota National Guard, it's, quote, fair to say that Walz served as a Command Sergeant Major as that was his rank at the time of his retirement in 2005, end quote. I think it's worth noting here that Arlie Ermey, an actor who portrayed Gunnery Sergeant Hartman in Full Metal Jacket, frequently used the nickname Gunny in real life and other projects. Ermey was a real-life Marine who served in Vietnam, but he retired as a Staff Sergeant, which is 1 rank below Gunnery Sergeant. In 2002, he was given an honorary promotion, but nobody's accused him of stolen valor for using a nickname he hadn't earned, and to be fair, he never did serve in that rank. Because of this, I find the outrage against Mr. Walz and his reduction in rank to be inconsistent and invalid. And to be clear, I am not trying to lessen Arlie Ermey's service in any way. Walz retired from the 1st Battalion, 125th Field Artillery, which provides artillery fire support to the 1st Armored Brigade Combat Team, 34th Infantry Division. Boy, that was a mouthful. According to Minnesota National Guard spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Kristen Auga, Walz held several key roles: Firing Battery Chief, Operations Sergeant, First Sergeant, and then Command Sergeant Major. In 2003, Walz deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, participating in security missions in both Europe and Turkey. I would like to note here that there are civilians who might find places that we deployed to be a bit odd. For example, around the time I deployed to Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, one of my coworkers deployed to Florida, also in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Her major command was the same as mine, U.S. Air Force's Central Command, even though she was in Florida and I was in Iraq. In fact, if I remember correctly, she wore one of these just like I did, DCUs. This brings us to one of the major criticisms aimed at Walz. Vance accused him of retiring to avoid deploying to Iraq. Vance said, quote, when Tim Walz was asked by his country to go to Iraq, you know what he did? He dropped out of the Army and allowed his unit to go without him, end quote. There's also a letter from 2 Command Sergeants Major who accused Walz of conveniently retiring a year before he deployed. A fellow soldier, however, who served with Walz defended him, stating that those attacks were unfounded. So let's address this. It's true that Walz retired 2 months before his unit deployed to Iraq. I'm not sure when he filed his retirement paperwork, but I would be very surprised if it wasn't a considerable amount of time before his actual retirement date. In my experience from the active duty world of the Air Force, a retirement like this would not have really impacted us in any way operationally because we would have anticipated it. I'd be surprised if this had a negative impact on his unit, But again, I wasn't in the Army, so I don't think it's fair for me to speculate beyond that. What we all do know for a fact is that he already went above and beyond what was required to retire. Instead of serving for 20 years, he served for 24. Walz owed nobody any more time than he already gave. This brings us to another major criticism aimed at Walz. Vance criticized him for claiming that he carried a weapon of war, quote, in war, end quote, even though Walz never deployed to a combat zone. I watched one such video, and Walz does state that he carried a weapon of war in war.
Hope woke up like many of you did 5 weeks ago and Dad said, Dad, you're the only person I know who's in elected office. You need to stop what's happening with this. I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at. We won't do it by dividing us. We will doing it by bringing in responsible gun owners from the side to make this happen.
As a veteran who served in a combat zone myself, I think that was a dumb thing for Walz to say. I guess it wouldn't have been false for him to claim that he carried a weapon of war during a time of war, because he did serve during a time of war, the War on Terror, and he almost certainly would have qualified on the M16 or M4 during that time. Again, not sure how the Army works, but in the Air Force, we qualified on the M16. I think it was once a year, but it's been like 15 years, so I don't exactly remember. But anyway, on its face, Walz's comment is misleading at best or an intentional lie at worst. In the recording I saw, it doesn't look like he was using a teleprompter, so I guess it's possible that he misspoke, which is what he claims, that he misspoke. At the end of the day, again, I think it was a dumb, misleading comment. But it's not stolen valor. Many comments on TikTok claim, however, that it does amount to stolen valor. In my previous video, I prove that this is incorrect. In brief, stolen valor only criminalizes lying about receiving certain metals or devices with the intent of obtaining money or other tangible benefits. At worst, Walz claimed to have served in a war that would have awarded him with the Iraq Campaign Medal, which is not protected by the Stolen Valor Act of 2013. Here's mine. Both veterans and civilians alike on the right have criticized Walz's service for claims about carrying a weapon of war in war and for referring to himself as a command sergeant major. As I've explained, neither of these things is as scandalous as those on the right are trying to suggest they are. Don't get me wrong, I serve to defend free speech, so I recognize that critics like these have the right to say what they think. That being said, I do think it's tacky for people who haven't served to criticize a man who served honorably for 24 years just because they don't like his politics. And when it comes to the veterans and how we police our own, I think some of them are taking this a little too far. In closing, while I've called this a deep dive, it's really more of a veteran's commentary on the most public aspects of his military career. I haven't seen Tim Walz's DD-214 or any other personnel record, but based on my research, I do think I've gone further into the details than most critics. I can't talk about his date of rank, I don't know them. I don't really know much more about his service. I wish I did, but I guess here's where we end. Thanks for watching Valor and Hope. If you found this commentary valuable, subscribe and share with others who want to make a difference. I'd love to hear your comments on this or other veteran-related topics in the comments. Editing Greg here, coming at you because Fox News has got some breaking news.
Women love masculinity, and women do not love Tim Walz. So that should just tell you about how masculine Tim Walz is. The other day, you saw him with a vanilla ice cream shake. Had a straw in it. Oh. Again, that tells you everything. Judge Janine.
I can just feel my manhood dripping away as I drink that. Wow, this is the hard-hitting journalism that America needs right now. Glad Fox News is on top of it. Remember, the fight for justice is never over, but together we can keep pushing forward. Stay strong, stay hopeful, and I'll see you in the next video, which I plan for next week, but it's hard to speculate with my course load. See ya.